Try to imagine the most incompetent person you know being given the most powerful and undeserved position imaginable. That is the situation with Donald Trump currently residing in the White House. He's literally so stupid, it almost takes intelligence to be that dumb. And now things are only getting worse as a recent Times Magazine interview with Donald Trump exposed him for the spineless coward we all knew he was. And believe me, this interview with these tough but fair questions left Trump panicking. How's it going? My name is Hunter Avalone with Occupy Democrats. Welcome back to another video. Now, Trump is busy unveiling his new merchandise, Trump 2028 hat. Meanwhile, Trump's polling is in the absolute toilet. Even Fox News is now reporting that the majority of people are disapproving of Donald Trump's overall job in his first 100 days. Trump, of course, acted like a total child and had a meltdown, claiming that Rupert Murdoch has told me for years that he's going to get rid of his Fox News, Trump-hating fake pollster, but he has never done so. Of course, when the results are not favorable to you, Trump, the results are not correct. Trump has also recently been cracking down against Harvard. This is very dangerous in regards to freedom of speech, and now as a result, even Candace Owens, yes, Candace Owens, the unhinged conservative girl, even she is now turning against Donald Trump.
I never thought that I would see a day where I would be rooting for a university above Donald J. Trump and his administration, but I don't recognize his administration right now. I don't recognize what's happening. How could Trump be such a free speech enthusiast and allowing these things to happen? Going after college universities, trying to suppress speech, while pretending that you're not suppressing speech, while pretending that you're fighting DEI. It's so messy. It's so obvious. Everyone knows what you're doing. People who are still trying to grift, I suppose, are not willing to challenge you on this, which is ridiculous, because when you are out of office, we are going to have to live with these consequences. Our children are going to have to grow up in this America.
I genuinely am not sure what to even say here. Like, when even Candace Owens starts to sound like the voice of reason, you know we are in clown world. Even more so, regular Republican voters across the country are continuously growing more and more irritated and outspoken. Recently, Republican Senator of Nebraska, Pete Ricketts, hosted a town hall in which he was quickly confronted and then booed by the audience.
Thank you for your feedback on that with regard to what's going on in the IRS. As I mentioned, if you're looking at the chart over there, we got to get our spending under control. And the administration is going through that process of looking at what can they do. If you guys interrupt, we'll have fewer time for questions. If you guys interrupt, we're going to have fewer time for questions.
Now, all of this nonsense has culminated to Donald Trump's disastrous Time interview. The entire article is quite long, but here are just a few highlights and some of the craziest things Trump said before, of course, he had his meltdown. First, what we saw within this interview was Trump's bizarre contradictions about inflation and the economy.
When asked about rising prices, Trump immediately contradicted himself and then declared himself right without evidence. First, he claimed the prices of groceries have gone down. The only price that hasn't gone down is the price of energy. Seconds later, he reversed himself. Well, energy has gone down, excuse me. Let me change that, is the interest rates. And interest rates have essentially stayed the same. When challenged about ongoing inflation, he insisted, so far what I thought is right. He dismissed an official minus 2.2% economic contraction by promising, you're going to have the wealthiest country we've ever had, and you're going to have an explosion upward in the not-too-distant future.
Within this interview, Trump also contradicted his claims about Ukraine.
It's interesting because I asked about the Ukraine thing. I said, President Trump, you said you would solve this issue in a day. What's going on? And, he said, oh, I said that in jest, Eric. Everybody knew that was symbolic. I wasn't really saying I was going to get it done in a day. This has been going on for 3 years. I've only been here in 3 months. So, I sensed that there was some frustration on his part. And I also think, he pulled back on that claim.
Next, it got even worse as the interviewers pressed Trump about ignoring a 9-0 Supreme Court ruling to release Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
As I asked him, why he was not facilitating the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia despite the Supreme Court's ruling. His answer was that his lawyers are telling him that that is not what the Supreme Court ruling says. I read for him the ruling. He still disputed it. When I asked whether or not he had asked President Bukele of El Salvador to facilitate his release or to bring him back, he said that he hadn't asked him positively. And so, throughout the interview, I found that Trump was, more evasive, more cantankerous than he has been in the past.
Now, after several more tough but fair questions, Donald Trump just had enough. As we know, he prefers to be surrounded by yes men, so if he's being asked tough questions too many times, he tends to get really upset about it.
President Donald Trump lashed out at the end of a tense interview with Time magazine, calling the conversation very nasty and challenging the reporters to a cognitive test. During the interview, Time journalists pressed Trump about possibly pursuing an unconstitutional third term, asking whether he would use loopholes or run as vice president to J.D. Vance. Trump sidestepped the question, instead boasting about his mental fitness. "I am being inundated with requests. I'm doing a good job. Great physical exam. And unlike every other president, I took the cognitive test and I aced it 100%. And I bet you guys couldn't get 100% on that exam." Trump continued, describing the test as especially difficult. "It's a tough exam. When you get into the mid-questions, it gets to be pretty tricky and pretty tough. And the last questions are very tough. And I aced it." He then directly challenged the reporters. I'd make a big, beautiful bet that you guys couldn't ace it." Moments later, as the questions continued, Trump lashed out at the tone of the interview. But look, it's good to have you. It's a very nasty interview. They don't ask any of the good things." The abrupt meltdown capped off an interview in which Trump contradicted himself on inflation, deflected questions about defying a Supreme Court ruling, and floated extreme ideas like deporting American citizens to foreign prisons. His final outburst reflected his growing frustration with even modest scrutiny just 100 days into his second term.
So all in all, Donald Trump has exposed really himself once again within this interview that he is nothing but a spineless coward. He hides behind his lawyers, he contradicts the Supreme Court, he contradicts himself, and then he whines like a baby because the questions weren't nice. Part of me almost feels bad for the MAGA supporters, but truthfully, they've hitched themselves to a sinking ship. And now, they might all be going down with Trump.